For today's video, I want to talk about 15 potential bounce back candidates for the 2025 NBA season. All 15 players that I'm going to talk about, I think had worse seasons in 2024 than they did in 2023, and I think are in a prime position to have bounce back season. And like always, you can let me know in the comments who you think is going to have a bounce back year this year, if it's somebody I didn't mention in this video, or even if there's somebody I mentioned in this video and you think I'm wrong and they're not going to bounce back. Please let me know down below. So the first person we're going to talk about is Jordan Poole of the Washington Wizards. A lot of people thought last year that Jordan Poole was going to average maybe 25 points per game now that he was going to be leading a rebuilding Wizards squad. He was the matching salary to come back in the Bradley Beal trade, and last year was definitely disappointing for his first year in DC. Jordan Poole last year played in 78 games. He was healthy for most of this season. He did start just 66 games. He was benched at one point. He shot 41% from the field, which was the lowest he has shot since his rookie season. 32% from three, also the lowest since his rookie season. He averaged 2.5 turnovers a night. It was not pretty to start off the year, and honestly, up until March, but then he turned things around. Jordan Poole finished the year strong, looked a lot more comfortable under Brian Keefe's offense after they moved on from Wes Unseld Jr. And in 16 games in March, he averaged 19 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds, and shot 45% from the field, 35% from three, and 94% from the line. The defensive numbers were a little bit better as well, and if he can carry that momentum into this year, he's definitely going to bounce back. Last year wasn't pretty for Cam Johnson and the Brooklyn Nets. It definitely looked like he was an overpaid player after getting a nice contract from them in the 2023 offseason, but I'm definitely excited to see how he's going to look under Jordy Fernandez, who has operated with a lot of good three-point shooters during his time in Sacramento. And I think this could be a nice bounce back year for Cam Johnson as a complementary piece to Cam Thomas, Dennis Schroeder, and in this Brooklyn Nets offense, instead of being the number 2 scoring option like he was to start off last year's season behind Mikal Bridges. Cam Johnson shot 39% from 3 on 6 attempts a night, which is still up there with some of the best of his career, and I think the numbers are going to revert back to what they were after he was traded to Phoenix to Brooklyn in the 2023 season, and is going to play good enough where he's probably going to get traded at this year's deadline. One of the best players that we're going to talk about in this video is Damian Lillard. In my opinion, had a down year in Milwaukee last year. It was coming off one of Damian Lillard's best years of his career in 2023 for Portland, where he was on All-NBA third team and averaged 32 points and 7 assists and shot 46% from the field and 37% from 3 on 11 attempts a night. He took 3 less threes last year and the 3-point percentage dropped. He took 3 less shots overall and the field goal percentage dropped 4 percentage points. And he just didn't look comfortable at times, especially on the defensive end in a completely new environment, in a completely new system. He had multiple different head coaches last year. Adrian Griffin, he had Joe Pruney for a minute, and then he had Doc Rivers towards the end of the year. And Doc Rivers came out and said that Damian Lillard didn't work out whatsoever in the 2023 offseason because he was worried that he was going to get injured, and that was going to result in him not getting traded from Portland that offseason, and they weren't going to be able to grant him his wish. So now that he's got a full offseason with Milwaukee, I think it's going to be a much better year number 2 than it was in year number 1 as a Buck. If you asked anybody who's the number 1 option on this Pelicans team after the 2023 season, everybody would have said Brandon Ingram. Now, if you asked everybody that question, they would all say Zion Williamson. I think Brandon Ingram is going to be better this year, but I don't know if it's going to be with the Pelicans. In my eyes, I still think he's going to get traded this year, but either on the Pelicans or not, he's going to be playing for the next contract. He is a free agent at the end of this year, and I think he's going to show the playmaking ability and the elite three-point shooting that he showed in the 2023 season, now that he's got more pressure on him that he wants to get another max deal in this league. He went from 25 points per game to 20 points per game from 2023 to 2024. The playmaking went down, like I said, because he finished that 2023 season really strong, and he was banged up that year, so it was definitely disappointing to see the numbers go down when he was more healthy last year. But like I said, I think it's a better chance that he bounces back if he's not on the Pelicans, or they just break up this crowded forward depth. So before we get back into the bounce back candidates, I want to give a word from today's sponsor, Underdog. So just a quick word on Underdog. They've been a great sponsor of the channel over the last year, and they are the best way to play fantasy sports throughout the NFL season, college football season, NBA is right around the corner, same with college basketball, MLB playoffs, WNBA playoffs are in full effect. Best way to play fantasy sports is with Underdog, especially their Pick'em feature, where you can do 2 entries up to 8 entries. You pick higher or lower in certain player statistics, and you get 100 times your money in a given night. It is so much fun to play. I do it all the time. Even if it's just throwing $1, it's just fun to do, and Underdog is the best place to play because of all the boosts and promos they're doing. They're doing Boosttober, so there's boost all month long in the month of October, and you can use my code SROS, S-R-O-S, to get a 50% deposit match up to $2,000. So say you throw in $2,000 in an Underdog with my code SROS, you're going to get $1,000 in free play. Link will be in the description below. Thank you to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back into the bounce back candidates. I know he probably has the worst contract in the league, but I do think he's going to be a good number 3 option for Phoenix next year. I think Bradley Beal is going to have a bounce back year. Like Damian Lillard in Milwaukee, year 1 didn't really go as planned for Bradley Beal in Phoenix. He was inconsistent throughout the regular season, but he also dealt with some injuries as well. But that's been the moral of the story for Bradley Beal over the last 5 years. In 2020, played 57 games, 2021, 60 games, 2022, 40 games, 2023, 50 games, and last year he did play 53 games, and he was an elite number 3 option scoring-wise. 18 points, 51% from the field, 43% from 3, 81% from the line. He gave them 5 assists a night, a steal a night as well. And yes, he is overpaid, but Bradley Beal was a good number 3 option, and I think he's going to continue that momentum, fit into the system a little bit more, and he will shine under a new head coach in Mike Budenholzer rather than what he was doing for Frank Vogel last year. So for Golden State, I could have talked about Draymond Green. I think it's going to be a bounce back year for him, but it really wasn't because of his play last year. It was because of his antics on the floor. But somebody I think can have a bounce back year for Golden State after everybody's writing him off as one of the worst contracts in the league this offseason is Andrew Wiggins. Now, it was a while ago where Andrew Wiggins was the number 2 player on this title team in 2022. He was the second best player on that team, in my opinion. But I honestly thought 2023, with everything going on in his personal life, he still had good production on the floor. Last year was a disaster to start off the year, but he got much better throughout the second half. He was terrible in October, November, and December. And while he wasn't as aggressive from January to March, his efficiency did go up. His playmaking went up. He was a good defender, and he finished off the season really strong throughout the last couple of weeks of the year. And if Andrew Wiggins can be locked in like he was in 2022, play with a chip on his shoulder now that Jonathan Kuminga is going to start over him, he could be a valuable role player for the Golden State Warriors who are trying to make the playoffs. We're going to talk about our first Miami Heat. It will not be the last one. I think Tyler Hero is going to have a bounce back year. So one main thing for a lot of these players that have in common, they were injured last year. They were banged up, and that's why they had down years. Now, if they're fully healthy, I think they're in prime positions to bounce back, and Tyler Hero fits that perfectly. It was 3 years ago where Tyler Hero was the 6th Man of the Year winner. He was phenomenal for them in 2023. I know he got hurt in round number 1, and then the Heat still went on to make it to the NBA Finals. And last year, he was inconsistent at times, and he was terrible as the number 1 scoring option for them when Jimmy Butler was out in round number 1 against Boston. I know, he was bad. It was too much pressure on him, and he could not run this offense whatsoever. But now that Terry Rozier is going to be healthy, Jimmy Butler is going to be healthy, I think he's going to go back into his secondary scorer role, and he's going to be one of the more efficient shooting guards in this league. And he's averaged 20 points per game for the last 3 years on elite 3-point efficiency. I think that's going to be the same this year. When you talk about some of the best point guards in the East, you're talking about Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard, Tyrese Maxey. We haven't been talking about Trae Young enough, and I think it's going to be a big year for Trae in Atlanta now that they traded DeJounte Murray this offseason. It is crazy. The worst lineup in the league last year, net rating-wise, was Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella. That is way too much talent on that floor unit to be the worst net rating lineup in the NBA. Now I think they're going to be so much more of a cohesive unit. I still like Quinn Snyder as the head coach for this team, and I think Trae Young is going to revert back to what he was prior to the injuries last year. And even though he was an all-star last year, I think Trae Young is going to be putting up one of the best shooting seasons of his career. He's going to also want to be proving people wrong in this league and showing that he is still one of the, if not the best point guard in the Eastern Conference. I think he can average 27 points, 10 assists once again. He could shoot almost 40% from 3. And if he's doing all that and this Hawks team can stay healthy, they could be a sneaky playoff team. I mean, for injury-wise and off-the-court issue-wise, this is bound to be a bounce-back year for Ja Morant. This is an easy one. It was a disappointing end to the 2023 season when the Grizzlies were the 2 seed. They lost to the 7-seeded Lakers in round number 1. Then Ja Morant had all the Instagram Live fiascos in the offseason. He got hit with a 25-game suspension from Adam Silver to start off the 2024 season, so it was already off to not a great start. And then after the suspension, he played 9 games, including a game winner in his first game back. He put up 25 points, 8 assists, and 5.5 rebounds a night in those 9 games, but then had season-ending shoulder surgery. And I know Gigi Jackson's already banged up, same with Vince Williams and Triple J, but the vibes should be back in Memphis this year. They're going to be competing for one of the top seeds in the Western Conference, and it's going to be led by someone that's gotten MVP votes in each of the last 2 fully healthy years in Ja Morant, who could put up 27 points, 10 assists, and shoot almost 50% from the field and lead the Grizzlies to being one of the best teams in a loaded Western Conference. The biggest X factor for the Lakers this year, in my opinion, is Austin Reeves. He was elite in the Western Conference Finals against the Denver Nuggets, even though they got swept back in 2023. Last year, I thought he was going to carry that momentum and be one of the best third options in the league. Now, maybe we had too high of expectations for him, but he was still good last year. I think he's going to be even better this year under JJ Redick. And I'm really just excited about this Lakers team as a whole under JJ Redick. I'm more excited about Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jared Vanderbilt, Max Christie, Rui Hachimura. Most of this Lakers team, I think, can have really big years, and I think it's going to be led by Austin Reeves, who is going to be the third best player on this team at the end of the year. Reeves last year put up 16 points, 5.5 assists, and shot 49% from the field, and those were great numbers, but the efficiency took a little bit of a hit after his breakout year in the 2023 season, and I think he can carry over that efficiency, what he did in that 2023 regular season and playoffs, into this year's regular season, but also put up better numbers volume-wise. He was still fine as a player last year, but it was definitely the worst year of his career in his age 38 season. He's going to be 39 now, but I do think Chris Paul is going to be much better this year than he was last year, now that he's in San Antonio, being their true point guard. I mean, when we found out that the Warriors went from Jordan Poole to Chris Paul, we were excited, but we were also like, that is a really weird fit. And I think him going to San Antonio, being the true point guard again, just getting these young guys involved, helping the development of Victor Wembanyama, their franchise building block, but also other younger guys on this team as well, like Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan. It's going to be great with Chris Paul leading the show, being this lead initiator. He's not going to turn the ball over. And he also shot 37% from three last year on around 3.5 attempts a night. I think he's going to go back to what he was in 2023 with Phoenix and have a much better year now that he's in San Antonio. I do wonder if he's going to end the year in San Antonio, though, or is he going to get traded at the deadline? One role player I am super excited to watch this year. He was so good for the Knicks in 2023, then was bad last year, got traded to Detroit, and was somehow even worse. But now he's a Dallas Maverick, and that's Quentin Grimes. If you watch any of the film from the Knicks 2023 season, what Grimes did for them down the stretch in the regular season and what he did against Cleveland and Miami in the first two rounds, especially on the defensive end, it's going to stick out to you. This guy could be such a good 3-and-D complementary piece for a team trying to win a championship. And that's exactly what he's going to do this season for the Dallas Mavericks. In 2023, he put up 11 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds a night, and shot 39% from 3. And like I said, was an elite perimeter defender in this role. And the confidence took a hit last year. I don't think Tom Thibodeau and this Knicks staff did a great job with Quentin Grimes continuing the development. And it was even worse in Detroit. I mean, it was a dumpster fire over there. But now he's under a good head coach in Jason Kidd, some great veterans around him. This is going to be a nice bounce back year for one of the better younger role players in this league. If the Cavs somehow moved on from Jared Allen this offseason, I would have been even more in on Evan Mobley, but I do think this is going to be a bounce back year for him. In 2023, Evan Mobley finished third in Defensive Player of the Year voting and finished on all defensive first team. Last year, he took a step back, in my opinion, on both ends of the floor, but I think he's going to revert back to what he was in 2023, and I think he can carry that momentum on what we saw with the offensive potential against Boston in round number 2 to this year's regular season. In those 5 Eastern Conference semifinal games against Boston, he put up 21.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, shot 63% from the field in 37 minutes a night. And we really got to see the fullest potential for Evan Mobley on the offensive end without Jared Allen. And there's always going to be some limitations with him on that end of the floor with Jared Allen still on this team, clogging up the paint. But I think Evan Mobley, under the new head coach Kenny Atkinson, is going to go back to what he was defensively in 2023 and is going to continue to take steps offensively as well. There's a reason why he's still got a rookie max extension after a down year from year number 2 this offseason. Speaking of players that got new head coaches this offseason, I mentioned Detroit being a dumpster fire, and it did not help this guy's year number 2 development, and that is Jaden Ivey, who I think is going to have a really solid year. I was so high on Jaden Ivey coming out of Purdue in that 2022 draft class. I thought he had a solid year with all things considered. And then the Monty Williams hiring was just a disaster for Ivey's development. There was times that Killian Hayes was starting and playing more minutes a night than Jaden Ivey, who was the 5th overall pick in the 2022 draft. You drafted him to be the backcourt partner with Cade Cunningham long-term, and you basically threw that out the window the first week into his second season, which was just coaching malpractice by Monty Williams. But now that they have JB Bickerstaff, who in 2024 is probably a better coach than Monty Williams and is going to prioritize defense and the development of Ivey as a complementary defender in that backcourt to Cade Cunningham, I'm really excited. He's already been off to a nice start in preseason play. And if he could just be a little bit more efficient inside the paint, because he can get to the rim with ease. He is so quick in the half court and getting downhill. This could be a nice bounce back year for Jaden Ivey, as he's going to be trying to get paid after this rookie deal is done at the end of next year's season. And the last player that we are going to talk about is up there with Damian Lillard as some of the best players we're going to talk about in this video, and that is going to be Jimmy Butler of the Miami Heat, the second Heat we're going to mention. This is a big year for Jimmy Butler. He is a player option at the end of this year. He is going to be playing like a madman that wants to get one last max contract in this league. We saw him lead the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals in 2020, and then we saw it again in 2023, pulling off one of the greatest upsets against the Bucks in round number 1, beating a good Knicks team in round number 2, and then beating the Eastern Conference favorites at the time, the Boston Celtics, in round number 3 in 7 games. last year, Jimmy was banged up once again, only played 60 out of the 82 games. He wasn't an all-star for the first time since the 2019 season. And I was really excited watching him go up against Embiid in the play-in tournament just to see what he could do in the playoffs, either against the Knicks or against the Celtics. And then unfortunately, he got hurt in that game. And then he wanted a max contract this offseason. Pat Riley said, we're not really giving you a max contract if you're not going to stay healthy. And I think that's going to light a fire under Jimmy Butler. He didn't show up to media day with a funky haircut or an emo style appearance. And this is going to be a locked in Jimmy Butler. And I think he's going to have one of his best Miami Heat years this season. So that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Those are 15 players that I think are going to bounce back in the 2025 season. Let me know if there's somebody I didn't mention that you think will bounce back this year in the comments below. And if there's somebody I did mention that you don't think is going to bounce back, please tell me why down below. And thank you again to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to use code SROS, SROS, to get that 50% deposit match. Link is in the description. Thank you all for watching again. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.